Good morning, all. Thank you for another fantastic Governor's Conference on Housing and Economic Development. It has been such a pleasure to see all of you back after 3 years' distance, to get the stakeholders, the advocates, the developers, the businesses, everybody in the room together talking at a critical time for housing is so meaningful to us all. Your presence is critical to moving conversations, policies, and programs forward to ensure that New Jersey continues to be a national leader in both housing and economic development. With this year's sessions on property management, community-focused economic development solutions, equitable affordable housing, and historic rehabilitation, you have all thoroughly demonstrated that we are at the leading edge of the latest developments, issues, and solutions regarding our ever-evolving industry. We cannot wait to see the continued progress that each change maker in this room can contribute to the state of New Jersey's development going forward. We can't wait because it's so critical that we continue to make our housing and our communities more equitable for everyone who lives there. To kick off our keynote brunch, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce a very special guest who's joined us today, our HUD Region 2 Regional Administrator, Alicka Ampry-Samuel. She has over 20 years of experience in public service. She served on New York City Council, and in her current role, she has a strong track record of fighting on behalf of her constituents, ensuring everyone has access to affordable housing and a strong and thriving community. She shares in our goals and our motivations, and so having her here to tie everything together that we've experienced over the last 3 days is so wonderful for us all. Federal officials are a key partner in ensuring vital programs can have a transformative impact here in New Jersey. We have many and diverse communities in New Jersey, and finding ways to cross all of those community boundaries is something that we can only do with the partnership of our federal officials. I'm thankful for you today coming here to share with us your thoughts and your advocacy on critical issues. I know that things like obtaining and maintaining home ownership, providing solutions for housing and economic development, and improving equity within communities can only be accomplished with HUD's leadership and support. With that, I welcome Alicka to the stage, and I ask you all to welcome her warmly for being here with us today.
Well, good morning, everyone. What a room! This is exciting. So I am delighted to join you at the New Jersey Governor's Conference on Housing and Economic Development. It's really great to see some familiar faces and meet so many professionals who further affordable housing and urban development in New Jersey. And when I say it's refreshing to see some familiar faces, I had an opportunity just to walk around a bit, and I saw people that I've known for quite some time, some years, and honestly had no idea that folks were even here working in New Jersey because I'm just a little girl from Brooklyn, New York, so it really is a pleasure to be here. So thank you all for having me today. I want to jump right in it. HUD's mission is to assist low-income families in securing decent, safe, affordable homes where they can thrive, but every single year, rent and home prices continue to increase and rise, and some people just don't know what to do about it. The COVID-19 pandemic only exacerbated these challenges, and so many families are priced out of the housing market, having to pay more than 30% of their incomes. And I know people who are paying over 50% of their income just to make ends meet. And to have to make a decision between if you're going to pay your rent or buy clothes and food for your families is just ridiculous in 2022. So HUD is working very hard to assist, and there are more resources available now more than ever before. So my purpose of being here today is to talk about all of the money that's on the table right now through HUD and this administration. And so my goal is to outline some of the remarks. I'm gonna have about 20 slides up here, and it's going to talk nothing about money, 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 money. Because since I was appointed, I can honestly say that maybe every other week I get a letter about HUD recapturing funds. And I don't see how we are in a housing crisis and we have cities and towns and states giving money back to the government. And so hopefully today I'll be able to outline what's out there, and the goal is to make sure that we are all staying connected and plugged in to move it so that we can house some of our most vulnerable families. So here we go. HUD just announced, this is hot off the presses, that New Jersey was awarded $8.3 million for housing choice vouchers in the state. That amounts to 646 new vouchers for deserving families to be administered by housing authorities, including $2 million to the state of New Jersey. Now, I'm highlighting this because this is the most expansive allocation of flexible rental assistance in the past 20 years. That means that 646 new additional New Jersey families will now have the opportunity to secure a Section 8 voucher to rent a private housing home wherever they choose. Now, we talk a lot about we don't have enough vouchers, and I want to be able to articulate today that HUD is listening, we hear you, and we are doing something about it. Okay. So the new allocation added to the housing assistance HUD provides New Jersey housing authorities will expand options for the vulnerable renters. This is something else that's new. FMRs. Just a few days ago, HUD announced the fiscal year 2023 fair market rents, which go into effect on October 1st, so that's tomorrow. Fair market rents are an estimate of the amount of money that would cover gross rents and utility expenses on 40% of the rental housing units in an area. Now, HUD is required by law to calculate fair market rents every single year. So FMRs are used in several of our programs because they determine the maximum amount that a housing choice voucher will cover. So this year, for the first time, HUD used private sector data in addition to public data to estimate the changes in the rent. Now, these new calculations increase the value of a housing choice voucher here in New Jersey by up to 13%. When we calculate the FMRs in this way, we're able to accurately reflect recent rent rates and hikes and steep rent increases in many communities. Now, to be honest, when I was working on my presentation and my notes, some people said, well, don't talk about FMRs because some people are pissed off, right? And I was like, well, you know what? You can't please everybody, right? And I say that because 13% increase is a decent increase when we're talking to families on the street that really look at every single penny and every single dollar. And so we may not be able to jump up to $3,000 and what we see in the real market, but we're able to do every little bit that we can to make a difference. And so I just wanted to say that because I've had some people heckle a little bit about the FMRs, but again, every little bit counts. The administration recognizes the importance of housing vouchers in securing affordable housing, and we're fighting for additional increase to all of our programs. The President's fiscal year 2023 HUD budget requests $1.6 billion for an additional 200,000 new housing vouchers. So what I just showed you on the slides was just two of the many HUD announcements that can improve the quality of life of low-income New Jerseyans and Americans across the country. But during the past few weeks, HUD provided resources and funding opportunities that we've never seen in the past. HUD has taken a deep dive and looking at the challenges that families, housing authorities, continuums of care, and housing and homeless advocates face every single day. HUD is intentional. We are intentional about providing resources to meet all of the challenges that families are facing. And that's because we don't know what's going to happen 2 and 3 years from now. So we're working every day to push what we see today. Now I want to highlight recent HUD funding and funding opportunities that have been made available in the recent months. The American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan and fiscal year 2022 budget collectively provided nearly 100,000 new housing choice vouchers, including the more than 19 vouchers that are right here in New Jersey. And there were 2 major allocations awarded during the pandemic available to households at risk of homelessness and to housing developers. $5 billion in the American Rescue Plan Home Investment Partnerships Program funds allocated to help communities create affordable housing and services for people experiencing at risk or experiencing homelessness. Out of that funding, New Jersey received $130.8 million. $5 billion in funding through the American Rescue Plan for emergency housing vouchers. New Jersey received 1,595 emergency housing vouchers that were awarded to 24 housing authorities. These housing vouchers are available through homeless organizations or COCs. The homeless and any low-income households at risk of homelessness can apply for those funds. And I want to quickly highlight the recent funding announcements that were made right here in New Jersey. See, I told y'all we're going to have a bunch of slides with a bunch of dollar figures. So last month in August 23rd, we announced $1.8 million to stabilize public housing agencies that were facing financial shortfalls right here in New Jersey. This funding went to public housing authorities that needed support to continue serving its residents as they take steps to ensure long-term financial solvency. And that $1.8 million went to 5 public housing authorities. That was August 23rd. The very next day, on August 24th, HUD awarded $1.2 million to HUD-approved housing counseling agencies to support their work in assisting first-time home buyers and homeowners who needed guidance if they fall behind on their mortgages. HUD also awarded the Housing Authority of the City of Camden nearly $200,000, it was $189,854, to provide housing assistance to youth who are transitioning out of foster care and are at risk of being homeless. And today, HUD announced nearly $500,000 through the Capital Fund for Emergency and Disaster to the Hindstown Housing Authority for the emergency replacement of their underground pipe system. And that will go into 3 public housing buildings. And these issues pose an immediate threat to the health and safety of the residents of Hindstown. And so that funding was announced today. So in recent weeks, HUD also announced funding opportunities so our partners can apply for resources to assist our residents. And so when I mention NOFOs, I'm talking about the Notice of Funding Opportunities, and that is money that you can apply for right now. So at this very moment, HUD announced on September 6th, $40 million will be available through the Healthy Homes Production Grant Program to help transform communities by fixing older housing, preserving affordable housing, and improving communities and the health of children and families. That application is due October 18th. Here we go with another one, the SHOP program. National and regional nonprofit organizations with experience providing or facilitating self-help housing opportunities can apply for $12.5 million through HUD's self-help home ownership opportunity known as SHOP. And those of you who are familiar with SHOP know that this funding is invaluable for rebuilding and revitalizing our neighborhoods. That application is due on November 7th. Again, everyone, I'm going through everything that is available now so that we can all, when I look around this room, there are too many organizations and the opportunities to partner with different groups in order to be competitive in your applications so that we can really do what we need to do here in New Jersey. So that shop application is due November 7th. Then we have, more recently in June, HUD announced that the agency will award over $43 million to support approximately 4,000 new incremental vouchers or stability vouchers to address unsheltered homeless and homeless encampments, including funds set aside specifically to address homelessness in rural areas. And I just want to highlight that a bit because at one point we saw a lot of homeless, the increase of homeless individuals on the street. And then we started to see, like during the pandemic, a lot of individuals decided to pitch tents all over highways and parks and wherever they had an opportunity. Then we started to see more encampments coming up, right? And then we started to see more families moving into parking lots of old retail businesses. And you're seeing more individuals homeless in their cars in parking lots. And if we're starting to see that level of street homelessness, we have to do something about it. People talked about Skid Row in California and all these other places and thought, well, we won't see that here, but we're seeing it, and there's an increase. And it's not just about being able to provide a voucher or housing for an individual, but this funding also comes with funding to provide support services. We're talking about support services for the mentally ill. We're talking about support services for those who may have addictions. And so this is being able to address the whole person. And so I just wanted to flag that because, again, this is funding that's available and we don't know when we will see that again. And that application is due October 20th. 202. Now, I grew up in a place in Brooklyn where we had a lot of churches that built 202 senior housing years ago. And when we talk about public housing needing funding for capital repairs, we know that those older 202 buildings for our seniors also need funding for capital repairs and to preserve the stock that we have now. It's not just about new construction. This funding will be available for new construction, but also we're talking about the preservation of our seniors. And so right now, there's a NOFO out where HUD is providing $174.6 million in grant funding, again, for construction and ongoing project-based rental assistance for our low-income seniors. We haven't seen 202 funding in quite some time, and so this is exciting right now. And that application is due January 25th, so we can pull it together. The last one I want to highlight, which closes today, is $2.8 billion in competitive funding to homeless service organizations across the country for support services and housing programs and people experiencing homelessness. It also reinforces the administration's commitment to boosting housing supply and lowering costs by supporting local engagement to increase the supply of affordable housing. That grant application is due today, so maybe you know folks that are in the back office right now, making sure that they get that application in. So, I talked a lot just now, but you probably don't know who I am. So, just a little bit about me. I am honored to have been appointed by President Joe Biden as the HUD Regional Administrator for New York and New Jersey. I started back in January, and since then I have had an opportunity to visit so many parts of this great state. And I've had an opportunity to meet partners and see firsthand the challenges that low-income New Jerseyans face. In this picture, I am at Holland Gardens in Jersey City, which is a public housing authority. And the reason why this is so important to me is because they're going through a revitalization, looking at RAD and PACT. I grew up in public housing my entire life. I lived in the New York City Housing Authority. And my mother, at one point, when I got to high school, was able to apply for one of those lotteries where we moved into a Section 8 building. And it was right down the street from the public housing authority that I grew up in. And we moved from one apartment to the next, pushing shopping carts down the street. And so the person that I am today is because I grew up in public housing, right? And my mother had that apartment until the day she died. She died during COVID in November 2020. And this work that I do I'm passionate about it, right? And this administration has been intentional about hiring people with lived experiences. And so when I was at Holland Gardens, it was amazing to see apartments, new construction going up directly across the street where you see a 2-bedroom going for $5,000 a month, directly across the street from a public housing authority, where the residents see the development that's happening around them, but not a part of the conversation to talk about, well, what about us? And so being able to work with the city of Jersey, the housing authority in Jersey City, it was an opportunity to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. We are partnering with people that actually care. And so I just wanted to talk about that picture right there. But it was a pleasure to also join our partners in Camden's Ablett Village. They had a start of construction for 75 beautiful new townhomes in a neighborhood that fosters inclusion and community. I joined stakeholders in Trenton. I know Trenton is here. I had an opportunity to visit Trenton with the secretary, and we had some great roundtable discussions. Then I was in Newark and Jersey City, and I even hosted a delegation from the UK that requested to come to New Jersey specifically. And they wanted to just take a look at all of the development that's happening around New Jersey. And that's folks from across the pond, right, that are focused on how's Jersey doing it. One of my most heartbreaking visits was to Inglewood and Elizabeth, where hundreds of residents lost their homes after Ida. And our New Jersey field office, who's here, and I just want the New Jersey field office to wave. So if you have questions after for me, you can just speak to them because they're the experts. But they worked with Mayor Bolage and city officials and residents to ensure that the residents will be able to return. And so HUD provided $228 million in community development block grant disaster recovery assistance for Ida. And we're working with the state to advance equitable disaster recovery and build climate resilience. And today I'm happy to report that the residents are on their way to the stability that they were demanding, and they'll be able to move back into those buildings. Now I want to turn our attention to the Biden-Harris administration and HUD Secretary Marsha Fudge initiatives that can potentially change the lives of everyone that we are serving right here. The Biden and Harris administration and Secretary Fudge have focused on low-income, underserved Americans. Racial equality is at the forefront of our initiatives. They were created to level the playing field for residents who just need sensible policies and initiatives in order to get them to financial stability. And I can't stand here as a Black woman and not talk about equity, right? And bridging the wealth gap. And I told you I grew up in the projects, and I'm thankful to own a home today, but it took a lot. When I graduated from college, I had 13 credit cards. And one of my aunties stole my identity. So, I get it. And so this is about bridging the wealth gap for our community. HUD Secretary Fudge agenda for economic justice, we are taking steps to make sure that this is our focus. And so we're focused on expanding savings, credit building, access to banks, and financial coaching. HUD developed this list of actions by listening to residents, stakeholders, convening roundtable discussions, and taking a hard look at what we could do as a department to move the needle and include more people. We are actively creating ways of building opportunities by supporting housing authorities and private owners of subsidized housing. And we are building more pathways from rental assistance to home ownership. Low-income families need support, and with these priorities, we're able to step up. So the first thing we're doing is helping with savings and bankings. People across this country are not able to save money. Less than half of the American households have 3 months' worth of savings. 7.1 million American households do not have a savings or checking account. Families also need support with banking. Banking or lack thereof negatively affects many minority communities. Low-income Black and Hispanic families manage their money outside of banks, going to check cashing places and putting money under mattresses still. Banking gives families a secure place to keep deposits and save for long-term and emergency financial needs. So we know that these asset-building actions are critical to achieving economic justice. So in addition to helping families with savings and bankings, we're also looking at what can we do about credit scores. 45 million Americans do not have a credit score, or they are credit invisible. Renters are 7 times more likely to be credit invisible compared to homeowners, and Black households have the lowest median credit scores and the greatest share of credit invisible amongst all households. So without credit scores, renters can't qualify for mortgages and credit cards. And that's just the first of the many barriers. So we're looking at rent reporting and building credit. We're looking into ways to expand our reporting system and our rent reporting for renters. Renters regularly pay for basic needs like rent, utilities, and phone services. So these payments should be reported to credit companies in order to build credit histories for our renters. And rent reporting for HUD-assisted families would increase the number of tenants who could be scored by credit rating agencies and improve their scores. And this would enable our renters with a strong record of on-time rent payments to get credit for that positive performance when seeking to qualify for a FHA-insured mortgage. So, just yesterday, the Federal Housing Administration, which is part of HUD, announced that it will allow the inclusion of a first-time home buyer's positive rental payment history as an additional factor in the credit assessment that determines eligibility for a FHA-insured mortgage. Again, when we're talking about building the wealth gap, this will allow more first-time home buyers to qualify for our FHA-insured financing. Equity. Equity is the overarching drive of this administration, and whenever you see Secretary Fudge stand up and talk, she's talking about equity. It is outlined across all of our program areas in everything we do at HUD. So we have an equity action plan. And this is the one small piece that, again, my secretary is very intentional about. So our equity action plan focuses on our procurement process, our fair housing laws, home ownership, and how we deal and address homelessness. HUD is widening the base of small businesses and small disadvantaged businesses to be included in the work that we do. And so again, we are intentional about bringing underrepresented groups into our procurement process at HUD. HUD is also taking a vital step to redress the nation's history of discriminatory housing practices and policies in its enforcement and resources to support civil rights and fair housing laws. HUD's fair housing work touches every person as the Fair Housing Act protects us. And so again, we are intentional about that. And when we are looking at homelessness, Black families, other families, and people of color, people with disabilities, the LGBTQ plus community, all are identified as people who continue to have longer periods of homelessness in the system, longer times to be housed, and higher rates of returns to homelessness. So if we know that and we see that every day, then why are we not doing something about it as an intentional focus? And so under this administration and under this secretary at HUD, that is part of our equity action plan. And home ownership, as I mentioned earlier, with wealth building, HUD is working to eliminate race as a predictor of success and close wealth creation gaps through home ownership. Home ownership opportunities influence where and how households live, affecting access to community investments and amenities. So access to home ownership and the wealth opportunities it promises is not equitable, we know that. And so again, we are realizing that, and we are making sure that we knock down every significant barrier to make sure that our families are able to be homeowners. So in addition to HUD's 4 key areas of focus, HUD is deepening its community engagement to ensure we hear from residents who have lived through this, and that the ones that have a voice are the ones that are influencing and changing our policies. HUD is cultivating partnerships with stakeholders so that together we find solutions to problems that have existed for centuries. Now, and I'm not sure if everyone heard about the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed by President Biden on August 16th. I had an opportunity to, okay, all right. Okay. It really is a big deal, right? I had an opportunity to be at the White House 2 weeks ago during the IRA announcement, and under the IRA, we will be able to reduce energy costs for all families and allow owners of HUD-assisted multifamily properties to preserve tens of thousands of affordable rental homes by making them more efficient, healthier, and resilient. So the IRA included $1 billion. There we go. The IRA included $1 billion to fund the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program. And this funding will go to owners of multifamily assisted properties for rehabilitation and energy efficiency. And the program will yield additional savings by reducing energy and water consumption and save approximately 20% on utilities. Examples of retrofit investments include insulation, HVAC upgrades, flood proofing, storm resistance, water saving improvements, and the installation of solar or other renewable energy systems at affordable properties. So it's not a matter of if we're going to have another storm, right? We're in the middle of one now. Ian has devastated Florida and is now in the Carolinas. It's just a matter, and we talked about Ida, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen again. And so we have to be responsible, and this administration in the IRA is addressing just that. HUD will also be able to provide technical assistance to properties to benchmark their energy and water usage and measure performance over time, and the investment will also improve the affordable housing stock that's available to low and extremely low families, and also improve indoor air quality as a result. So, additional provisions that's dedicated for HUD programs under the IRA are climate and environmental justice provisions in the law, and they will be transformational in HUD-assisted tenants, communities, and residents. There will be $9 billion in rebates for energy efficiency and decarbonization efforts, with a plus up for affordable multifamily households, and $27 billion to launch a national green bank, which will be transformational in private investment and HUD-assisted communities and properties. and resilient measures such as coastal protection and drought prevention preparedness. So again, HUD is currently working on the program design, and we're doing everything that we can. And so please, if you have any questions about this, reach out to our field offices, and we'll be able to sit down with you, and we love a round table to make sure that you have everything that you need to move forward. So, as I narrow down my remarks, equity drives HUD. And since taking office, President Biden and Secretary Fudge have focused on households that need a hand up and worked hard to create action plans and looking at ways that the federal government can step up and assist our families. As I mentioned, I grew up in public housing, so this is personal for me, and we don't have a lot of time left. I'm hoping that all of the announcements and the initiatives and the action plans that were outlined today will allow you to be able to see what HUD is doing, what the federal government is doing to do our part and to step up. And it's a common sense approach, but we can only do this together. The only way to make a real mark is if we are partnering together. So we will continue to work hard to assist low-income families by building more affordable housing and upgrading our communities so everyone can enjoy the opportunities and have a path to equity and prosperity. But we look forward to doing that work with you right here in the Garden State, in the state of New Jersey. And so with that, that is it for me. But thank you so much for all the work that you do, and we look forward to working with you in the future.